If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then the UK Property Market Stats Show is for you. My name is Chris Watkin, and my special guest this week is Kristian Stott. We'll come to Kristian in a second. The purpose of this show is to talk about what's happening in the UK property market right here, right now. Many indexes out there are often months and months out of date. The Land Registry particularly is looking at sales that were agreed 9 or 10 months ago. The Nationwide and Halifax are looking at mortgage offers. And again, the mortgage offers are normally dealt with probably a couple of weeks before exchange of contracts. So again, they are, as it's taking normally 19 weeks at the moment to get a sale through, again, those are going to be a couple of months out of date. By looking at the listings and the sales agreed, price reductions and exchanges, we can see what's happening in the property market, as you say, right here, right now. And by doing that, we can then judge what's going to be happening to those indices in the future. Listings are important because if we have too many of them, then if there's too many houses on the market, then we have problems with oversupply. If there aren't enough properties selling, again, we have an issue there. So we're going to be looking at all that. This show lasts for approximately 1 hour, and the first half an hour, we'll look at the national stats. We'll then spend 5 or 10 minutes looking at the regional stats. And then finally, we will end up at our local town focus. And this week, it is on Fulham, where we will look at all the Fulham estate and letting agents, compare how well they're doing, their market share, how many houses they sell, sales to listings, exchanges to listings, price reductions, everything. It's like a Rightmove pie chart and Rightmove Plus report on steroids. Today, I'm joined by Kristian Stott. He's a regular on the show, comes to the show every 6-8 weeks. And Kristian used to run a huge estate agency in the West Midlands, and now is in the property, AI, and other sort of functions on the peripheries. But he keeps his finger on the pulse when it comes to stats, and he certainly knows his onions. Kristian, thanks for joining me today.
Hello, Chris. Good to see you.
Good to have you back on the show, mate. You always offer a great insight because you're both an estate agent, but also not an estate agent anymore. So you have a great insight. Kristian, we're dealing with week 40 this week, which, just looking at my calendar, is Monday, the 2nd of October, 2023 to Sunday, the 8th of October, 2023 inclusive. And we will compare week 40 against week 40s on the other previous 6 or 7 years. And we will also look at stats compared to year-to-date figures as well. So should we just dive in and go and have a look at this week's stats, mate?
Yeah, I'm quite excited because I think the last time we spoke, we were sort of waiting for something to happen and we weren't quite sure what. So I think by now, all will be
here we go. Well, you didn't see these, you haven't seen these stats, so it'll be new for you as well. So here we go. So, as always, we look at the listing. So I'll just spend 30 seconds looking at these stats, and then, Kristian, you can dive in. So this is for everyone that's watching this, the pink line is 23, and then the orange dots are 19, the turquoise 18, and the yellow dots 17. And this is listings. Cumulative listings year to date, we're on 1.3 million. The average price of a property that's come onto the market is £436,000 this week. And that is the number of listings, 32,051. So let's bring us back to this one. What's your thoughts on this, Kristian?
Seems to be tracking, doesn't it? I think, when we were talking before, we were sort of worried that could we be seeing a lack of stock and changing demand, and potentially that changing demand forcing the stock to change. And actually, it seems to be tracking kind of as we had expected. It's behind 2018, but actually rather in line with 1917. Stating the bleeding obvious there, aren't I? I don't think there's anything to see there compared to what we were expecting.
No, and what you've got to remember, ladies and gentlemen who are watching this, is that awful year of 2008, the number of properties that came on the market, if they were published on this graph here, it was coming up here. Everyone dumped their houses on the market.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was a flood of stock coming on the market. And that was the thing that started where basically buyers it was very much a buyer's market. and they could knock people down, which drove prices down. It's important that we keep an eye on these stats because this is the demand, the supply. This is the supply. Okay. The average price of a property, as I said, is presently running at 436. We're going to come and look at that. We've got some new graphs for you, Kristian, to have a look at that, but we'll come on to that in a second. So the number of price changes is 24,358. Now, just to give you an idea in terms of price reductions, that means on average 14.8% of UK residential stock is being reduced on a monthly basis. Okay, so whether that's enough or not, I don't know. And the average price of a property being reduced is 412. Any thoughts on price reductions?
Yes, if you just jump back to your the number of changes, this is what we were really focused on. So the stat previous to that, I think that's what we were focused on when we were talking before about how many disgruntled vendors there's going to be who've approached the market with one expectation and they're now being realigned to another. Obviously, that does present opportunity for second agents to come on in if it's the first listing that's being reduced. But that number, I think, is a dangerous number. You just don't like to see it. It means agents having to really work their stock. And it means what they brought to the market isn't necessarily what the market was expecting. And I think that's the one to watch as the weeks move towards the end of the calendar year is, what's going to happen with that number. We don't measure viewings in this conversation, do we? We don't have stats on that.
We don't have stats on that. I mean, interestingly, the number of price changes, as you say, is 24,358. The average for the year is 20,200.
Yeah. Yeah. I think 22 is a big uplift. I don't know about you. That was probably inaccurate, but it's not that far off, is it? I don't like that number, if I'm going to be brutally honest with you.
Okay, you think it's too high? Is it endemic of the fact that agents are putting overpriced properties on? I mean,
I think it is symbolic, yes. Obviously, we're measuring in weeks, aren't we? And a week is no time. But what I do think is if that is the trend and the trend continues, it means that agents are still valuing against the expectation of the market, which means they're still bringing prices down, which means they're still upsetting vendors, which still means they're still providing opportunity for a second listing. And as an agent, you spent all the money getting it on the market, all the diesel to get no cash back out of it.
I mean, I find it fascinating at the moment. If you look at your chances of selling a property in 2021, the chances were knocking on the door of 80%. So basically, for every 100 houses that came onto the market in the UK in 2021, just under 80% of them would sell. Okay.
Yeah, I think we've had this conversation before, but for certain brands and certain areas, that's a low ball. Actually, there were areas and brands that were doing way over that.
Of course. I mean, and again, what you'll tend to find is that the higher priced properties have a lower propensity to sell. And the further up north, the greater the chance you will selling. So in essence, there were some agents in 21 that were over 100% because they were eating into their stock.
Yeah.
I think the magic thing here is, which I think is really important, is that this year, on average, 32,600 houses are coming on the market each week, of which 21,777 are sale agreed, with 5,400 price fall-throughs, which means net sales is 16,300. So the bottom line is this: it is to within a fag paper's width. For every 2 houses you're putting on the market, you're exchanging contracts on 50% of them. And like you say, that is, I mean, you could say that is a more normal market. But again, my personal opinion when it comes to these estate agents is, what's the point of putting something on the market that's overpriced if it's not going to sell? But then the other part of me says, Kristian, you need it on the market to sell it.
Well, you say that also. You've missed a word out, which is when. I think if you bring stock to the market and it is slightly overpriced, it's all right, as long as the the relationship with the owner of that property is such that you've had a realistic conversation. They understand the perils of coming to the market at a higher than expected value. It's fine, because you're going to sell it in the end. You might reduce it 5 times. You might do 100 viewings. You'll sell it in the end. I think the bigger challenge is if you bring them to the market at a price which is not sort of relevant, let's say, for want of a better description, and you lose the instruction, that's when you're burning money.
Yeah, and I'll bang on about this constantly, is how many times does the valuer put the house on the market and then leave it to the next and chip away? When in reality, I will bang on about this to the cows come home. You put it on the market, you get it reduced. I do not think negs should be there to reduce houses. It should be the valuer. They employed you to put the house on the market, so you employ you to actually get the price down. And it's worth having a go. Sometimes you've got to overcook it, but get it, if you're not doing it, get it down within a few weeks. And why?
I'm not going to talk about that one. I think.
Whilst I'm getting off my soapbox, why do you need a 20-week sole agency agreement? Come on.
Oh, there's just so much there, isn't there? I think different businesses have different roles and responsibilities, and they tackle challenges in different ways. And I think that's fine. I don't think there's one rule and one way of doing it. I think there's many, and all roads lead to Rome, so to speak.
Yeah, but some don't. Some are dead ends, and they lose half the property.
Maybe, yeah. Agency agreements, but they're all right, aren't they? What's wrong with them?
There's nothing wrong with sole agency agreements. Why should it be 24 weeks?
How long do you want it? 16?
I think eight weeks with a rolling 2-week notice period thereafter. It's fair. If you need more than 8 weeks, why do you need more than 8 weeks?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer the question. I think it's all down to the conversation you have, isn't it?
Yeah, and don't get me started about listing bonuses. Oh dear. Anyway, let's move on and talk to sales before we all get got inched off.
No, I'm not baiting you anymore now. That's it. I'm done. Go.
Right. So we're on to weekly gross sales, and this week we hit 20,616. The running 4-week average is 20,900 because we had a cracking week last week. It was 21,500. And the year-to-date weekly average is 21,777.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are running at about 5 or 6% below the average 19 figures.
Yeah, and price reductions are up.
Yeah.
So I think I'm not getting involved with sort of polarity in terms of the market, but I think the conversation we had when we last saw each other, which I think was 6 weeks, but I can't recall, might have been 8, was exactly that. What's going to happen with these reductions? What's going to happen with the sales? And ideally we want it going the other way.
I mean, just to give you an idea, listings year to date are 99.7% of the 17-18-19 figure. Gross sales are 94.3% of the 17-18 and 19 year-to-date figure. Right. We will get to net sales, but net sales are 89.9% of the 17-18 or 19 average. So
it's a lot of cash there, Chris.
There is, but interesting that obviously fall-throughs are much higher.
It's a lot of cash.
Listings are the same. Gross sales are 5% below. Net sales are 10% below. So again, anyone who's watching this and looking to set some targets for next year, I think it's very fair that if you're looking on exchanges, look at your 17, 18 and 19 figures and knock off 10% on the assumption that the market remains the same. Can't go up, and I don't, God knows what will happen.
No, fees can, but okay.
Yeah, okay. But interestingly, people have been saying, what about fees? Well, house prices have risen roughly since the start of pandemic. House prices have risen by very similar amounts to what inflation has. So if house prices have gone up, your fees in real terms should be exactly the same. Anyway, let's get back to sales again. So that's the sales. So
hang on, just on that one though.
Go on.
Where they're going to finish at the end.
What, exchanging?
2 to 3% lower than the beginning of the year, which puts us, 17% higher than what you're talking about pre-pandemic? Does that sound reasonable?
Sorry, what are we talking about here? Net sales, gross sales?
No, prices. You were just talking about prices. Where's your punt on where they're going to finish?
I'm not going to guess that one. I'll do it next week because I haven't had. I don't. I only say what I know, and I'm not going to say that.
No.
I will say I have put my flag in the sand to say 885,000 completions.
Yeah, I've had it tattooed on my forearm.
Okay, but we won't actually know that until probably May or June next year when all the numbers have come in. Yeah, still confident on that one. Okay. Gross sales today, as I said, 871,000 gross sales and the average price 356. That's the number of sales this week, which is 20,066, like I said. And I think this is quite telling. This is the average listing price versus the average sale price. So let's talk. So anything you want to add about the actual numbers of gross sales? Remember, we're 5% below 17, 18 and 19.
I think, I said to you before, I think there's a lot of cash there.
What do you mean by a lot of cash?
That people aren't going to earn. If you look at sort of net profitability of the smaller agency businesses, you talk about it amongst friends over a drink, 4 or 5% doesn't sound like much money. You take it out of your business, it's a lot of money. Again,
there's a lot of agents that are running quite close to the wire when it comes to profitability. What's your thoughts on, what I am noticing an awful lot in estate agency from some of the more, how can I say, smarter estate agents, is that they are really stripping out, they're reducing headcount, but what the people that they are keeping, they're whacking their value, instead of having 10 people in the office, they'll have 5, but they do pay them a hell of a lot more, and then outsourcing stuff. What's an interesting conversation on LinkedIn and Facebook about outsourcing the two. I'm a big fan of outsourcing sales progression and viewings, and that created a really interesting suggestion that why the hell should you let a stranger show someone around a house, and why would you let someone loose on your sales pipeline? What's your thoughts on outsourcing those two things?
I have lots of thoughts about that because I do it for a living, I guess, Chris. But I think that we're in a really interesting state, technologically speaking, right now, because what you've got is very valuable and advanced technology becoming widespread and very inexpensive and very accessible very quickly, which can't but change things. So I think there's an element where if you look at agency business processes and value, the stuff they do, great stuff, secret sauce, and basic stuff they don't want to do, there's an element to sort of actually consider insourcing now new technology that wasn't previously available, in particular around sort of AI and I suppose automation. The two you picked are quite interesting. Viewings is very much a human and in-person service. And if you accompany viewings, which some agents don't, or some have a blend of vendor-led viewings and physically accompanied viewings, others move to block and open houses, stuff like that, which is another way of accommodating a lot of people inexpensively. I actually think it's probably a brand choice. I think accompanied viewings that are done by an outsource is probably quite a good idea a lot of the time. It is more expensive than the pound and pence you'll pay your own person to do it, but it's a lot easier to sort of deliver it on demand, I suppose.
It depends if that's freeing that neg up to actually do some business generation work, which will earn you more.
Yeah, and viewings is a really great place to get your next instructions.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. But again,
if you buy this house, how are you going to pay for it? Because I can help you with that. I think that's probably the biggest challenge around outsourcing viewings. Sales progression, I find quite contentious because in many businesses it's part of their secret sauce. Not every business has moved sales progression into isolated roles, and some of that file handling, case handling is still done by negs and valuers, just the branch in general, just distribute that workload. Other businesses have refined it into an isolated role within their business. I find it contentious. I don't want necessarily to comment on the players in the market that deliver it as a service, so to speak. But I think that it is very important. I can tell you from my own experiences that the better you do it, the more you refine it, the more money you make, and the happier your customers are. So I think if you want sort of contentious elements of that point, do sales progression really, really well, and don't ever allow that to slide because it makes the till ring. As to whether you outsource it or not, I think that just comes down to your own relationship model, your own business model. To sort of plug a little bit, I think that the advantageous use of modern technology can be applied very well to sales progression, in particular automation. There you go. There's a plug. I think we do a lot of heavy lifting in sales progression. And also, the whole terminology around sales progression is because the industry fundamentally doesn't work very well in that we rely on battering groups of people with telephone calls to drive a transaction. If you phoned up Amazon and said, how do you make sure something gets delivered to my doorstep once I've ordered it? They will not tell you that they phone and chase people and do all that sort of stuff. They do it with data and technology. And I think if you look at blockchain technology that's coming into the marketplace, we're going to start seeing a transactional platform or platforms which might start to negate the need to be constantly chasing each other and annoying each other with telephone calls to try and get transactions over the line. And the sooner, the better, in my opinion.
Good stuff. Nice one. Okay, so the average price of a property coming on the market, as I said this week, was £436,000. That's slightly more. Okay, so that's very similar to what it was last week. I found it fascinating, this big jump here, which was everyone coming back off their summer holidays and the posh houses coming on the market, but that is now returning back down. But the average price of a property selling has remained very tight around that 340 to 350 area.
Yeah, and we need a couple more weeks in that line there to see how the relationship with that and the SSTCs pans out moving forwards. You are right. You've got a big fluctuation there, but I think it is seasonally driven to a certain extent. It's an interesting one. The only other thing I would say is that sometimes, when the Porsche dealership forecourt is full, people are offloading assets, and it could be that there's an indicator of that, or was at that time, but seemingly now it's coming back down to you draw a line through the whole thing at where we're at 424, is it 420 something, 425? If we put a line straight through the lot.
Interestingly, looking at 2022, the average price of a property coming on the market in July and August was 412. And then the average price of a property coming on the market on the first month coming back from summer holidays was 447. So it did jump up. Mm. So again, that's a seasonal thing. Okay, let's get back to the stats, because that's what we're here for. Okay, here we go. Fall throughs again continue to slide slightly, which is good to see. Let's just pull the stats up. Hold on. So the fall throughs are almost identical as last week, 4,700.
I've got to get used to this because this is a two-sided graph. Where's the beginning of the year? 2301. Right. Okay, fine. 2301 to now. So they are climbing for this year, though.
Well, again, once you've got let's ignore this dip here.
Yeah, well, your line there covers 2 years or 1.5 years, I guess.
This covers from July 22. So
right. So January 23 to now, the number of fall throughs per week is rising this year.
Yes.
And we are not at the peak. The peak was June, was it? Looking at it, I'll tilt my head. But yeah.
Peak was June, where it was 6,500. I personally prefer the percentage, this graph here, which shows the percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And again, ignoring this.
You got December there, yeah. So
okay. Again, look, we were at 40% here during the months after the Liz Truss budget. Drifting down slightly. She was bumbling on quite nicely.
So we've gone from 22 to 28%.
Yes.
That's nasty.
Yes, but then if you ask most estate agents, they say 1 in 3 house fall through. When in reality, the long-term average of fall throughs is 24.3%.
Which is, I think if you draw a line between January and June there, pretty much the number you're going to get, isn't it?
Yeah. About there. There you go.
Yeah.
Fall throughs as a percentage this week, 28. Oh, there we go. There's 24.3 there. And again, interesting. Look at the fall through rates there in 22, because obviously 12th of October, we had just about hit the poo had hit the fan with regard to the Liz Truss budget. Why that was much higher there.
No more fizz with Liz.
There you go. And the number of fall throughs as a hard number. Let's move on and look at net sales. So again, net sales this week, we are on 14,800. Last week it was 15,800. The week before, 14,900. And the week before that, also 14,900. So the average for the year is 16,300. So we are running slightly below the average. But again, thoughts on this? And again, I'll just give you this graph here. So interestingly, we are presently at 89.9% year to date with net sales compared to 17, 18, and 19.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that started off early doors in 23 at around 90. She steadily grew up to about 95, 96. And since the summer, she's been slowly drifting down a couple of percentage points. Last week, it was 90.0. This week, it's 89.9. So the gap is slightly widening, but it is at a snail's pace. Thoughts on net sales?
So I think for the third time in this conversation, there's a lot of cash in there, isn't there?
Indeed. Right.
It's well, look, if we finish on your magic number of 885, that's a lot of money people can't earn this year. So, you're right, the house price is up a bit, so there's a bit more in the fees. You would hope agents are putting their fees up or working hard to get better fees, especially if vendors are asking them to come to the market at tough pricing strategy and trying to sort of cheat the market a little bit with the money. But I think that number's a frightening number, Chris.
But you know me, I'm a half glass full sort of guy. I think I'll have taken that at the start of the year, considering what the newspapers are saying.
Okay, fair enough.
What I am interested in, and this is only anecdotal evidence, is that the stronger agents seem to be getting stronger and the weaker agents seem to be getting weaker.
How about that?
There you go, eh? Okay, we'll just whiz through these final ones. And again, these are all available. So all the graphs that are available, they are without permission. I'm asked that you don't put them on social media, but you can download them for your own personal benefit and use them on your valuations free of charge. I've got no issue with you using them at the vals. The link to download all these is on the YouTube channel. If you look up in the description, scroll down to the bottom, there'll be a link there that you can download these. We talked about, as I said, this is the percentage difference between listings and sale price. We did a graph earlier on, but it's just another pie chart. Just shows you price changes as percentage of listings. That's quite, again, Kristian you said earlier on that price changes are quite high, and they are quite high there at 76%. And gross sales, again, just slightly below running the average. But we did say that, remember.
I think on the price changes, you've got to sell stuff. So if price reductions generates interest in properties and you sell it, it's a good thing. And actually, when you're on a sort of 1% fee, the impact that price reduction has on your fee is not huge, certainly not compared to the impact that price reduction has on the vendor's takeaway value. So, price adjustments, as I suppose is probably a more polite term, they're not necessarily a bad thing. It's just concerning, I think, that as that number rises, it is saying that agents are struggling to sell properties at the prices they originally suggested, or the vendors pushed upon them. If you've got people that are hostage to borrowing or other reasons, and they're pushing agents to list at values which are higher than the market can sustain, that's a really hard thing for an estate agent to tackle. I need to get 300 grand for this house, but it's not worth it, Mr. Vendor. But I need it. I need that money. And I just think with these price reductions that what we're seeing there is agents having to work harder to offload stock. That costs money. And it costs relationships. Vendors get annoyed about it. And I think, we're talking week on week. So is a week going to change the year? I don't think it will. But what I do think is we've seen indication that agents are having to really fight to get stuff sold.
And therefore, fees should be commensurate with the work you do. So don't pull your pants down on your fee. And again, be the first choice, second estate agent. And again, I something which I find fascinating with estate agents is if you do walk away, it's really important that you make it easy for the vendor to come back to you. So many estate agents will lose it on the valuation, and then because they're mortally wounded and offended because they've been rejected, they don't keep in contact with that vendor because it's reminding them of that rejection, which again is a huge fear.
Yeah, although you talked a few moments ago about the sort of long-term sole agency agreements, and 57% of something is better than 100% of nothing, isn't it? So I suppose now is the time, if you've got to come to the market at a higher price, get them on a long agency agreement, so at least you get paid.
Oof. Controversy there. Right, we've got some stats here which you can download, but we're not going to look at them on the screen. We're going to look at them on my other screen. So
why is that controversial? Why do you get your data? Why is that controversial?
Because are you doing a service to your vendor by they fall in love with something, but you deliberately overvalue it, but can't be bothered as a valuer to take personal responsibility to get it down reasonably quickly? It remains stagnant. And we'll quote that Which report that said that overvalued properties go for less money in the end. So your vendor misses out on the property of their dreams, can't move their kid into the right school in the right catchment area, and when they do sell, they sell it for less money, according to that report from Which.
I suppose, I guess so if you've had that conversation, which is this day, this month, this quarter, this year, and so you've made it clear to a vendor that given an amount of time you could achieve a certain price, if they choose the this day price, they're agreeing with you that they've got to be strategically aggressive with their pricing strategy to get it gone in a very short space of time. Indeed. In the same way as you would with an auction property. You're not going to go to market with an auction property at some big ball price that you're never going to get. You're going to come in low, get the sort of feeding frenzy going and get people excited about it. Not all properties arrive at the market overpriced because they've been overvalued.
Okay, I'll give you that. And I tell you what I am finding is that the market is quite like a fly's eye. So you have one town where it's on fire, and then because again, I know you know this, but some of the people watching this is that my daytime job is I write content for estate agents, social media, in a ghostwritten style, so they put their name to it. And you could be looking at two towns, and the saleability in one town is like on fire, and the next town along, everyone's put their house on the market, they're not selling. It's weird. Mm. Okay, so these are...
Some of that's driven by yield, isn't it? Investment yield. But yeah.
Okay, but again, there's not many towns that are driven by buy-to-let investment, unless apart from the big northern cities, or probably likes of your Brightons and your things like that. So we'll take that with a pinch of salt, mate. Right, okay. So these are the national and regional stats, which you can download from the stats. The magic, we're not going to spend too long on these, but green is good and red is bad. Green is good and red is bad. So you can have a look at these, and they're basically, here we go. But isn't it interesting is that as you look at the regions on the left-hand side, and it says there new instructions and price reductions, and sale agreed and net sales and all the other beautiful percentages on here, see how the tonality is very similar depending on the region. Look here. So this is the end of August going into September, how basically the number of price changes went up, and the price changes here went up, and the price changes here went. So look, you can see that every estate agent was on holiday in August, or the vendors were on holiday, so the price reductions were lower in August. And then green, red, green. So the tonality and the general direction, what's happening is very similar depending on the regions, okay? Again, very similar here. In London, there wasn't that much activity, and then she's come back again in price reductions and a bit more listings. So just again, we're not going to spend too long on these guys, boys and girls. You can just have a look and get a flavour for these, and then download them and compare them with your town. Anything you want to say on this before we move on and look at the focus on Fulham?
Not really. I think it's it's an interesting picture. It seems we focused in a lot on price reductions, but I think it's an important factor in the agency space.
Okay, well, let's go and look at Fulham.
Gosh, that got pretty.
There you go, mate. We're just pushing the boat out on the graphics, the production values. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we are focusing on the Fulham Estate Agency, and we're going to do a bit of lettings at the end, but mainly estate agency. We are using the 20EA Insights platform, okay? The 20EA Insight platform is available to all estate agents on a town, county, regional, and even a national basis. It is available free of charge for 3 postcodes. If you go to 20EA Insights, there is a function that you can have it for free for looking at the data in the last 3 months. And then if you give them some shekels, that you get more areas, and you also get a longer date spread on your stats. I'm not being paid by 20EA to say it. I'm just a bit of a fanboy when it comes to the platform. I think its data is amazing. It's like Rightmove pie charts on steroids, and Rightmove Plus on steroids. It's an amazing bit of kit, and it will tell you stuff that will help you as a estate agent. It's not just your market share, but stats that you can actually use on the doorstep in the house to prove that you're a better estate agent. You sell the houses quicker, you get a better price, and how quick you sell it as well. But as I said, I'm not being paid. They provide me this platform free of charge, and in return, I mention it and use their data to help you boys and girls out there in estate agency land. I know you're a bit of a fan yourself, was on the 20EA, aren't you, Kristian?
I think it's brilliant.
Good stuff. So like most things, ladies and gentlemen, it's looking at the data and seeing how it goes. So for the purposes of this, we're looking at Fulham, which is SW.
Oh, it really has gotten pretty though, hasn't it? Look at all those shadows.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go. And just to make you aware, it is actually changing again with even more data coming in the new year. So yeah, it's an amazing bit of kit.
Power BI glorified.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, okay. Calm down and let's crack on. So first thing we always do is look at the new instructions of the properties that have come onto the market. The average price of a property that's come onto the market since January 21 has been £1.2 million. So let us see who the bad boys and girls, obviously, of Fulham are. So first off, we start off with Chesterton's. And Chesterton's...
So you're going back to 21, are you? 2 years?
Why? Why? What would you like me to do?
No. I just saw that big number there, and I'm thinking, wow, it's a lot of properties. Fair enough. That's fine.
The reason I've gone back that far is that it enables me to see what's happened to new.
Yeah, no, that's grand.
Okay. So you can quite clearly see here that the average property in Fulham is 1.2 million pound notes. And let's see, we're starting off with Chesterton's, who are the biggest estate agent in Fulham. They have a market share when it comes to new listings of around that 11%. And you can quite clearly see here that their average price is, again, 1.2, so they're hitting the average. And their market share for new listings is bouncing up and down between 10 and 15%. It's interesting. Okay, let's next go out to Foxton's. Foxton's 1.1 million, they're actually knocking on the door of 1.2 very closely. Again, their market share seems to be bouncing around between 10 and 20%, although she has leveled off slightly and she's now around that 10% mark. Let's look at Savills. So Savills are obviously an upper quartile agent. So their price is at 1.6. We will go and have a look at the upper quartile market once. We'll have a look at that in a second. So let's have a look at Dexter's. So again, it looks like Dexter's are at the lower to middle market because their average price is £928,000 and their market shares, again, been bouncing all over the shop between 4% and 8%. So interesting that we've not seen any growers or droppers. They're just kind of bouncing up and down. It's quite spiky, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we can't really see evidence here of multi-agency agreements. What I do think is over that period of time, it's quite, if you look at that top 10, it's quite a high volume of high fee listings for those businesses to be handling. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is that exchanges, for, if there are multis, but it's a quite a large number of high value instructions to be handling.
Okay, well, interestingly, I think at the moment, is it 7 or 7? 1 in 14 properties at the moment are on a multi-listing basis, but that is a national figure.
No, not for Fulham. Okay, yeah.
Okay, let's look at Kinley's. Again, all over the place there when it comes to new instructions. Let's have a look. Marsh and Parsons seems to be drifting slightly, and again they're at 996 with just 1.2 back with John D. Woods. Looks like you've had a good October, but again bouncing around, nothing much happening there. And then Winkies, they seem to be growing quite well. So okay. So you said let's go. That's that. Let's go and have a quick look. I'll just take a photograph of this so we can compare it. Hold on a second. There we go. Hold on, there we go. Good stuff. We'll tell what we will just have a quick look at is the upper quartile. So the upper quartile is going to be, I'm going to go for anything over 2 million. I think that's a fair compromise. Let's have a look. So here we go. As you would expect, the three amigos. Lots of them. Savills, Knight Frank and Chesterton's have got a big lump of the upper quartile properties, which you would expect. And this is for anything over £2 million. Let's just see what Savs have been doing. Okay, no growth there, just bouncing up and down. Knight Frank, don't know what's happening to you guys. Chesterton's, okay, and then Foxton's. So again, hold on a second. My apologies, Foxton's. You've got your foot in the door with the upper quartiles as well. So we'll get those back. Okay. You said what about in exchanges? Well, we've got another screen on those, but we'll just have a quick look at the exchanges to see what's happening there. And you can see that Chesterton's had a market share of 11%, 11.7% on listings, but they have a market share on exchanges of 14.67. Okay, Savills have a market share of 7.38. But their market share on exchanges is 10.4.
Sorry, though, hang on. What was the number of listings in the time frame versus exchanged?
Tell me the office, and I'll give you the number.
No, I meant for the market. Sorry.
Hold on. So let's do that. Okay.
So that's all of market, is it? No brand filter.
Hold on. There we go. So, 2 seconds.
In that time frame, January 21 to 23.
8,325 listed.
Yeah, and then exchanged.
2,853.
Right.
We're going to dive into that a little bit more detail on that one. Again, what I will just state for the record is Dexter's will not appear on this list, because Dexter's do not mark their properties sold up the contract and therefore we can't trace them on their exchanges. Okay, so I must state for the record that the Dexter's figures, aren't because of their business choice that they do that their figures on one of the next screens is not going to look particularly good. But again, that's the reason why, and there's nothing wrong with Dexter's at all. It's just that's their business decision to do that. Interestingly, let's just move on and look at the stock of properties, and we can quite clearly see here that the stock levels. So you've got January is the dark blue, 22 is the yellow, and the red is 23. And if you can notice that the stock levels, now you've got to ignore October slightly because we're still halfway through it. But if you actually look, the stock levels in Fulham have hardly changed over the last 3 years. Whilst if you went outside of the M25, then the number of stock that's on the market today is approximately 40 to 60% more than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So stock levels have hardly changed in Fulham. As I think that's particularly interesting. Anything else before we move on to the next screen?
Not really. You are right. It's interesting about the stock levels.
Okay.
No, it's an interesting market price-wise, isn't it?
Okay. So again,
serious cash there.
Okay, we'll just have this is the each month the percentage of stock you've got, and this is obviously going to run very close to your listings. But you can see Chesterton's are growing their stock levels there, whilst Foxtons are not dropping their stock levels. Savs is drifting downwards. Dexter's about the same. Aspire down. Kinley's down. Then okay. Knight Frank. Don't know why nothing's coming up on Knight Frank. Marsh and Parsons drifting down. Okay, let's move on and look at this. Now, this, again, apologies for anyone who's normally watches this show. You know what I'm about to say. But for those ladies and gentlemen who have not watched this, particularly the Fulham agents that might have not seen the show, this particular graph is full of an awful lot of information. It's a bit of a data geek fest, which is obviously going to interest Stotty here because he's a geek fest. Sort of data guy, but this is really, really special here. What I want you to do is not only look at new instructions on new instruction market share or sold subject to contract and sold subject to contract percentages. I don't want to look at fall and throughs and price changes, but I will come to you, Kristian, for you to talk about fall throughs and price changes in a second once I've done my magic with regard to exchange and withdrawals. You see, at the end of the day, as an estate agent, you list a house to sell it and get the house moved. And it's all very good looking at sale agreed. It's do you actually exchange on that bad boy? And I think it's really, really important to compare, and this is what this stats does. So you're looking at these 4 columns here, exchanged and withdrawn. Basically, when a property leaves an estate agent's books, she leaves because she either exchanges or she withdraws. You know, you could say, what happens when a sale falls through? Well, it comes back, if you keep it on the books, it doesn't leave your agency, it comes back on the market as a listing and off you go again. But exchange versus withdrawn is basically the exhaust. And the magic thing is here is this. Now, this is really important that Dexter's do not mention their sales are low, as you can see here, because they don't mention the sales. So you have to just, you know, take that with a pinch of salt. But the magic thing is this. For every 100 houses that Chesterton's put onto the market, they will exchange contracts on 38.89% of those properties. Foxtons will exchange contracts on 14.89% of them. Savills, 46.35%. Knight Frank, 39.6%. Then we have smaller agents like Aspire at 49%. We have Kinley's at 42%. Winkworth's at 64%. John D. Wood at 63%. Marsh and Parsons 46. Sorry, Marsh and Parsons 38. Brick at 49. Lawson Rutter at 51. And again, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on this because again, there's some agents in Fulham that will be watching this. You can quite clearly see that there is a massive gap here between some of the agents who are exchanging contracts on a really low number and some that are exchanging contracts on a higher number. The average in Fulham for the last 12 months is 33.46% of properties that have come on the market have exchanged and completed.
What's the national average on that? Because that seems to me to be quite good. I can't remember. You have told me what the national average is, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
That's presently running at about the early 50s, early mid-late 50s, because we're looking at...
New instruction to exchange is 50-something%.
No, if you look at... Okay, so... What this figure is, this is basically the last 12 months, anything that's left in estate agents' books. So that's not listings, it's not sales, it's how many have come off an agent's books. Yeah?
Right.
Okay, there's too much data on this screen, all right? So that's the purpose of me, is to explain this screen. I mean, you know, and the bottom line is this. If an agent, for all the... So here we go, look. So if you add those two numbers together, withdrawn and exchanged, you come to a figure of just about 3,000, don't you? Well, 2,998, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, those two figures there. That's the exchange column, and that's the withdrawn column. Add the two together, 2,998 properties have left Fulham estate agents' books in the last 12 months, of which 1,000... of which 1,003 have exchanged.
Yeah.
One and 1,995 have been withdrawn.
Got it. So if I do exchange to instruction, I get 36%.
Yes.
35.7.
Yes. But I would expect that in London.
Right.
But what I don't expect is this, that again, ignoring Dexter's, okay? But the bottom line is this, is look at the range in that top 5, top 10. You know, you've got agents like Winkworth, independent agent working as under a franchise brand, who quite clearly here, along with John D. Woods, can say, Mrs. Niggins, if you put your house on the market with me, you're over a 6 in 10 chance of selling. And then if you go up against one of the other agents, there are other agents in that list whose figures are nearer 1 in 6.
If it's because of multis, though, it's probably a different pitch, isn't it?
It is, but the bottom line is this, is that the agents have actually done the job they've been paid to do. So if you're
they both have, we just don't know which agent sold it. If it was on a multi...
You do, because a multi-agency, the other agent won't slap it as sold with the contract, will they?
No, but the vendor got what they wanted.
Yes, but the thing is...
And maybe had a higher chance of getting it.
Okay, but the purpose of this is to work out which estate agent actually does the job they're paid to do. Interesting time. So again, just those are the stats. Have a look at them, ladies and gentlemen, and you can see how good or bad you potentially are compared to your competitors. What about price changes? Again, the average is 49% of houses in Fulham have had a price reduction. You've got some there like Savills who are pricing at 29%. Only 29% of properties are being with.
If you order the data by price change and we look at the rank, I think that's going to be an interesting order. Other way. There you go. Oh, it's put the junk data. It doesn't work. It's putting the junk at the top. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry.
Good stuff. Right. Okay, I'll get it back to rank. There you go.
What I'd be interested to see, because I noticed a mixture of large and small numbers, but interestingly, what are Chesterton's running at? So they're exchanging on 39%, but they're making 61% price changes. I mean, they're really working hard for a living, aren't they?
That's hard work.
Yeah.
You know, for Chesterton's, because you've got some big numbers there. I'd hate to be the cameraman or camerawoman and the person that does the floor plans on those. And other interesting stats of various different, how good or bad, I'm not going to mention names on that. Right, should we move on and look at the next one?
The only other thing, I suppose, that shows us there, and I can't see because of where my zoom is, but if you just scroll down the whole, not that data, the whole of the screen, so we can see the online piece. Yeah. So definitely people, I would say, in Fulham prefer the sort of, I don't know how to describe it in a way where
local-based estate agent.
Gunned down outside my house. Yes, perfectly put. Thank you.
Okay. Interestingly here, this graph here shows that in the last 12 months, the number of listings for the whole of Fulham is 9.43% less than it was for October 21 to October 22. Okay, so between October 22 and October 23, there are 9.43% less listings. So it's interesting. It looks like John D. Wood have really pulled their socks up on the listings. Knight Frank have done. So if you're at -9, you're treading water. So their Savills, they're about the same, but they're actually 9% up on the market. Knight Frank at 22, but interesting. Look, Foxtons and Aspire and Kinleys are all down. So that's interesting.
If we just take a couple of those, so John D. Wood, if you just could back, yeah, then we look at John D. Wood's at the top there, isn't it? I can't see now. You've moved there.
Hold on. There you go.
Yeah. So they've grown 44%, and they're exchanging on 63% of their properties. They're good numbers, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, let's just have a quick. So this is John D. Wood here, and they were that. So basically, if you look at the graph, you can see the movement. So look, look at Foxtons. That's this year. Foxtons. So look at that huge movement. Foxtons have had a real drop in Fulham in terms. So that's last year. Foxtons bring it in. Chesterton's. So interesting. If you look, so if you're looking October 21 to October 22, it looks like Foxtons and Chesterton's were the main dominant agents because they were very close together. Foxtons have pulled their horns in slightly. Savills have hardly moved. So again, if the further on the right, the more listings you have, the further you are up the graph, the average price. So you can see here that Savills have retained market, but Knight Frank seems to be growing in the post 1.5 million range. Chesterton's have moved up slightly. Yeah, there's lots of movement there. Lots of movement. Again, have a look. And that's the beauty of this piece of software. Again, do contact them. You get access to this free of charge, and it's a brilliant bit of kit if you know how to use it. As I said, I'm not being paid to say this. Let's move on and look at this graph. Now, again, a bit of a data geek fest here, so we'll just spend a minute or so looking at this. So lots of data, and the first column here is what happens is 20EA will look at every single one of your listings and apply an automated valuation model figure to that price, to that house. Chesterton's will and they'll look at all your 345 houses at Chesterton's, and then what they will then do is that they will then look at how much have you put the house on the market for over and above that automated valuation model figure. And you can quite clearly see here that there are estate agents here who overvalue properties because the numbers are much bigger. So you've got Dexter's at 3.45, and you've got Kinley's at 3.97 and JLL at 4.25. You've got Tom DeWitten at the bottom at 4.25. I'm not criticizing, these are just the stats, okay? Is the automated valuation model bang on? There is no such thing as a perfect automated valuation model, but if you're applying the same model to all the properties and they're in the same location, then at least you're coming off the same hymn sheet. But then,
mind just killing off the chat?
Say again. Yeah.
On the right hand side, there's a chat window. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Good stuff. So if you look on the variants, though, you picked out Dexter's, but they're beige on variants also.
Yeah. So again, we are looking these in isolation, and we're going to bring them together as we move further right on the graph. Okay. Because again, this is a bit of a geek fest, and and it's important you know what you're looking at. So the next column here is price achieved. So they'll look at what price did you achieve from the property from the original asking price. So Chesterton's will overvalue, and again, we'll put the property on the market on average of 1.32% above what they Chesterton's think it's worth. Sorry, what 20A think it's worth. And then the price that's actually achieved is 5.59% below that original asking price. And you can quite clearly see here, there are some agents here. Now, this is interesting. Look, Dexter's and Kinley's are very similar when it comes to what they put it on the market for, which they're at the higher end, okay? Yet, when it actually comes to what they achieve for it, see, look, Kinley's 10.25% less. What's Dexter's one of the best figures in the top 10 at 2.69. So if you want to know what percentage, you just add up the two and work out what the difference is. Now, again, percentages are not particularly brilliant. A lot of people don't get them. So what happens here is this. 20EA will take the average property in Fulham, which is 1.3 million, and say, what would each agent sell that house for? So Chesterton's would achieve, so if we just scroll down here, so the average 1.3 million house here would sell on average for £1.269 million in the last 12 months, because people, London's a bit tougher, the price is a bit harder. But then you look at all the different agents, Kristian, and it actually shows you what variance you got off the average. So therefore, Chesterton's will get £25,500 less than the average in Fulham compared to the Fulham average, whilst Foxton's will get £30,000 less, and Savills £12,000 less, Knight Frank £7,000 less, but Dexter's will get £39,000 more. Now, again, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, and one has to take these stats with a pinch of salt. But the beautiful thing about these stats is that bosses can look and see whether your negs and valuers are overvaluing and what you're actually achieving for the punters. And again, I would say to any Fulham agent watching this is that you cannot use this stats in your marketing, but you can use, if you buy the product, you can take it out and show the vendors these graphs. I do speak with the 20 EA guys. Again, I'm not on commission here, but it's a very powerful bit of kit that you can see. Any thoughts on this before we move on?
Only that on other occasions when I've looked at this data, and in particular with you, there's often a correlation between the top ranking, and I mean that ranking in terms of 20 EA's ranking, agent, and the tightness of those numbers. And actually, there's quite a lot of fetch at the top in the Fulham market. Some of that just could be around the fact they are dealing with bigger numbers. But it is interesting. Also, they've gone with the average listing price, which doesn't necessarily accommodate which end of the market that agent's playing hardest in, whether they're going up to the 2-3 million stuff or down to the 500-600, because there were some properties at that price, weren't there?
You can actually change it. So you just look
okay.
Like there.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't change the 1.3 million price, but it does actually show you for all the listings in that price range what sort of so that's interesting to see. Again, you can play with this to your heart's content. You can put what type of house, and you, as I said, you can go. As I said, we're Fulham here because I've already preloaded it, which is SW6. Again, the magic is use the data for your own benefit, and you can use it in the valuation to prove that you get more for a house than someone else. And again, some of these smaller agents and again, I will just say for the record that a lot of that number there is being dragged. The top agents don't look so good. And I think a lot of that is that there are some agents here with such small numbers that is going to affect the averages. Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect normally the big agents to be all under the average. I don't know. Interesting. Okay. Let's move on and look at which agent sells houses quicker. And you can quite clearly see here that Winkworth's take on average 49 days from new instruction to sale agreed, whilst Foxton's at the other end take on average 148 days.
Okay.
That's a big gap. Then we're looking at the pink lines, which is sold up the contract to completion. And most on average, most are hovering around that 90s mark, 90 to early hundreds. But this is interesting. This puts it in proportion. Normally, if we're outside London, the new instruction to sold up the contract would be around a quarter to a third of the pie chart in terms of the whole time. Whilst in London, because it takes so much longer to sell a house, then I've never seen it like that before.
No, nor me.
Okay. But again, if I was Winkworth's or Lawson Rutter, I'd basically be saying to you the other data is Mr. Mutt, I will sell your house in half the time as Foxton's. It's not a criticism of Foxton's. This is just how long these guys take to sell houses. Okay.
I think if they could, it's a good story, isn't it? The shorter the time, the less finance cost if you are borrowing money to pay for the house.
True.
I'll get you a higher price, fewer price reductions in a shorter time frame, and my fee will be bigger.
Also, I believe 20 EA take all this data and produce nice reports, one-page reports that you can use that have been. Okay. Do check them out because again, some of this is a bit geeky, and would work well if the potential vendors, a bit geeky numbers. But if they're not, then they do produce these other stuff. Again, I'm not being paid by 20A to say this. I just think it is. There's not many stuff out there that is game changer stats, and this is one of them. Okay. Finally, let's just have a quick look at lettings. Now, there isn't that much data on this, but basically you can quite clearly see here that the number of new...
This isn't Fulham, is it?
Yes, this is Fulham.
There can't be 3.4 million properties for let in Fulham.
Hold on, there we go. Sorry, mate.
And not at £1,500 a month. Now we're farming. Yeah, £3,000 a month, 80. Yeah, that's more like it.
Okay, here we go.
£3,000 a month seems reasonably low, if I'm honest with you. I was expecting it a bit higher than that. I was expecting, £1,000 a week, to be honest with you.
Okay, so this is interesting. Let's just have a quick look here. So the average, now this is interesting. Is this the average rent in London has gone up 48% in the last couple of years, but what they don't tell you is that the rent dropped by 40% between 18 and the COVID. Is
that right?
When we went into COVID, everyone dumped their rents or houses on the market. The rental market in London crashed.
Right.
So actually, the net effect between 18 and now is only a 9% rise in London net. But she's gone like that, and then she's gone back up again.
And yet, interestingly, we saw that the onliners didn't really feature so much in that Fulham space on sales. Just slide the disc over so that we've got 23 in there.
Hold on, there we go. This is new instructions.
Yeah, so open rent still with nearly 11% of the market.
But what I do want to do is this. Let's just have a look at. Let's just go there. So in Fulham, in 2021, 6,113 properties came on the market at an average rent of 2,567.
Mm.
We now move that to 22. And now the figure's gone up to 3,362, with 5,057 rental properties coming on the market.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we haven't got the full year in Fulham, so we'll just have to tweak about a second. Hold on. So now the average rent is now 3,559, but isn't this interesting? We've still got another quarter to go, and we're at 4,887. So we've still got another quarter to go, and we're just under 5,000. Let us just have a quick look at what that was in. There we go. Hold on.
Well, hang on. We can work that out, can't we?
Well, I'm going to do it now. Hold on. So there you go. Okay. Year to date in Fulham, 4,887 properties from the 1st of Jan to the end of September have come on the market.
Yeah.
Whilst last year, 3,938. So there has been an uplift of 20% of new properties coming onto the market in Fulham for Q1, 2, and 3. So there's more stock coming on the market. Interesting, if we just have a quick look at stock levels, you can quite clearly see here that, look, stock levels were high in 21 because we still had the after effects of everyone dumping their house properties on the market and getting out.
Yeah.
But then they came back in. So this is stock levels. Notice how the red, which is 23, so this is the stock levels, and it's greater. And you can see here that the stock levels are higher. So in essence, stock levels in Fulham for rental properties are approximately 10 to 20% higher, depending on where you are on the month. But
than they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go and just have a quick look.
Which I suppose isn't a bad thing, is it really? This data doesn't tell you how many are undermanaged, does it? Which is a shame, really. It'd be really interesting.
Yeah, we don't have that data, unfortunately.
No.
So open rent, I've got 10.6% of the market. Chesterton's 8.5.
On instructions, yeah.
This is new, but again, most of these aren't brand new first time. These are just relets that come back up. So again, these are not growing. So again, you've got to take this with a slight pinch of salt because we can't tell you who's growing or not. Foxtons are growing, but again, didn't they buy Douglas and Gordon out? So some of that's going to be tied into these figures. Kinley's, Dexter's, Aspire, Draker Lettings, Savills. I don't know why that's not come up. And Knight Frank. Okay, good stuff. I can't say much more on the listings when it comes new instructions for lettings, but I think it just gives you a flavour of what's coming on the market and where agents stand in that marketplace. Right. Any questions? Anything you want to look at before we finish off, Kristian?
Not really, Chris. That was an interesting trip through Fulham.
There you go. Final thoughts before we go.
Oh, do you know, I feel actually like um, we've said the same thing on a couple of shows that I've done with you, which is where is this total sales for market for the year going to go? And what's going to happen in terms of how many um, price reductions overvaluing, what is happening with it? Because it doesn't appear to me that we're seeing yet prices plummeting per se. Um, Price reductions, I guess we have to do our own guesswork on how much they're being reduced by. Is it 1%, 5%, 20%? You know, it's quite hard to actually get a feeling about that. And I feel a bit like things appear to be happening without really happening. Um, we're not seeing. There's no catastrophe, is there? You know, there's a lot of the press is quite focused on it being catastrophic, and it might turn out to be the case. I don't think I'm convinced of that. Um, I think the only thing I do feel is almost, I think, the same wrap up as we had before. There is less money to go around. There's less cash in that industry. If you're correct with 885, which I think, as I've said before, I think you are, um, people are not going to be able to earn as much out of the industry as they want to, need to, ought to. Um, and I think that's complex. And yeah, there's ways of beating the trend of being better and working harder and doing more and delivering better value to your customers. But statistically, as you know, lies, and statistics. Statistically, there's less money to go around, isn't there?
Interesting times ahead for a state agency. Again, it comes back down to basics. It's all about prospecting, listing, getting that, negotiating, getting the house sold, and then earning your money from it whilst doing a good job. It sounds really easy and simple to do. It is simple, but it isn't easy. Kristian, thank you for your time today. You've been exceptional as always. But more importantly, thank you for watching this show. If you have any questions with regard to the data, please contact 20EA directly, and it's their insights platform. And I will see you next week for week 41, and where we'll be looking at another town and we'll be looking at the national stats. So thank you for your time today.